Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Patho and Chill. Today we're going to talk about a disease that billions of dollars are spending every year doing research, yet no one has found a cure. You're right, you guessed it, that is cancer. So, why don't we start off with a basic question? Can anyone get cancer? The answer is yes. Some people may be more predisposed to it via inheriting some type of mutation from their parents. So that is why it's very important for you to check, be aware of your family history, know who's had cancer, if anyone's had cancer, because you may be more predisposed to getting cancer as opposed to anyone else. With that being said, yes, some people may be predisposed because of their genetics. However, anyone can get it via environmental factors, especially. So UV light can cause mutations within your DNA that can lead to cancer. Other things such as smoking, that is a huge one. Tobacco can easily cause mutations in your DNA. Large consumptions of alcohol, and there are various other chemicals. On top of that, there are there are some viruses that can even induce mutations in your DNA, such as HPV, upon many others. There are even scenarios in which the location that you live in can affect how predisposed you are to a certain type of cancer. I know there are many types of cancers in Japan that are way more prevalent than they are in other countries like the United States. And there's been studies in which people, when they move over to a different country, over time, there is a lower rate of that cancer prevalence in that type of population. Aside from that, even probably one of the most predisposing factors is age. As you age, you are more likely to acquire genetic mutations that could potentially lead to cancers. So now, how exactly does cancer happen? You know, I've been mentioning all this information about getting mutations. And so basically, it's the accumulation of these non-lethal genetic mutations that can lead to a disruption of the proper functioning of the cell cycle. Okay, so now let's dive in a little further into how exactly a normal cell cycle functions. So essentially, we have many different types of cells in our body, right? We have what is known as labile cells, which are constantly in the cell cycle. They're constantly dividing, they're constantly replicating their DNA, replicating their organelles, the parts inside of your cells, and then dividing to replenish that tissue. These are very common in your skin. Your skin is constantly shedding cells because they're constantly replicating. Other types of cells are what are called stable cells. These cells can basically replicate if they are induced, if they're told to replicate. These are commonly seen in organs such as like the liver, your kidneys. On top of that, there are other types that are permanent cells. These permanent cells are usually never dividing, and these make up your neurons, so any part of your nervous system, even your cardiocytes, right, the cells that make up your heart, these cells are never dividing. So then whenever we look into the cell cycle, I hope I can pop it up here. So the cell cycle is divided into 4 stages, right? We have the G1 stage, the S stage, the G2, and then the M. So in the G1 phase, that is where your cell is replicating all of its organelles, right? It's starting to grow a little bit bigger, replicating organelles to prepare for the S phase. The S phase is where actual DNA replication takes place. And then you move on to the G2 phase where the cell continues to grow until we reach the M phase, the last part of the 4, in which cell division actually occurs, right? The one cell becomes 2 cells, now that everything's been duplicated. To go from the G1 phase into the S phase, there's a checkpoint. This checkpoint is going to ensure that anything that was replicated, there's no mutations in, right? So our cell has many genes that are called DNA repair genes, and so they're constantly fixing our DNA. Throughout a day, there are many mutations that can occur. Before the cell is going to go and divide its DNA, first it has to make sure that everything is fine within it. So these genes and these proteins are going to be at a checkpoint to prevent moving on to the S phase, in which it could be potentially harmful to a cell. So then, aside of these DNA repair genes that I've been talking about, there's also what are known as proto-oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes. So These proto-oncogenes are basically what say, yup, everything is good, time to move on to the S phase, right? They are what allow a cell to proceed onto the next phase of the cell cycle. On the other hand, the tumor suppressor genes, these tumor suppressor genes are the ones that say, no, you gotta stop, there's something wrong back here with the DNA, we are not gonna proceed, and then that's normally where other pathways are taken to basically kill the cell and go through what is known as apoptosis. So when I was referring to all these mutations that can happen by extrinsic factors such as UV, smoking with tobacco, alcohol, etc., these are known as carcinogens, right? And they can basically induce a mutation in these genes that basically belong to the checkpoint. So if you get a mutation in your proto-oncogene, you're basically telling the gene to create proteins that just allow for it. No matter what has happened, just go through the cell cycle, replicate. On the other hand, the same thing is with the tumor suppressor genes. If you have a mutation in a tumor suppressor gene, then it's even if something is wrong with the DNA, it's gonna say, what the heck, go on, divide, replicate, and then divide. It doesn't matter to us. And that is essentially how cancer can develop. The cell cycle is now essentially unregulated, which can proceed on and on and on. So to recap, these two genes, they balance each other out. The tumor suppressor gene says stop, and the proto-oncogene says keep going. They're basically like the yin and the yang, right? They keep the balance. Okay, so I think at this point the video is getting a little bit long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end it here, and I'm going to start a part 2. If you guys enjoyed this, please make sure you like and subscribe, and I will link the other video to the description, so make sure you go watch it. Peace out.